Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar by Smartkarma. I'm Michael Tegos. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming back to the webinar Analyst Devi Subhakesan to take an in-depth look at India's nascent electric mobility market, one that is especially interesting because of the specific use cases observed, as well as relevant policy changes, which Devi will tell us more about in the next few minutes. Devi is an equity analyst with an Asia consumer sector focus. She has been part of buy-side and sell-side institutions and has covered oil, gas, and coal, media, textiles, and consumer discretionary sectors across ASEAN, India, and North Asia. Some standard housekeeping before we start. You are always welcome to send in questions for Devi using the Q&A button on your screen, and we will try to get to them at the Q&A session at the end. And please do not reshare the contents of this webinar without our express permission. Our recording will be available, as always, afterwards. With that out of the way, Devi, welcome back. Very good to have you here with us. You can take it away.
Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Today, we will discuss about a sector which has been making a lot of headlines in India, quite rightfully so, mainly because electric mobility is hot topic world over, but in India it has had a little late takeoff, but quite steep in terms of the growth numbers, or the absolute volumes are still not big enough. The discussion, we will broadly look at the mobility landscape in India and then look at the e-mobility space by segment, and see how government policies have been a big factor in pushing this demand cycle for e-scooters primarily for now, for reasons specific to India in many ways, and what we think are the potential game changers which can accelerate growth for this nascent sector. And we'll end up with a brief overview of the main players in this space as of now in India. So if you look at the overall mobility landscape in India, I'm talking about all vehicles in India in terms of the pool of vehicles that are registered. This is government data, which we are talking about 300 million vehicles. You can see from the numbers that more than 75% are two-wheelers. So in terms of numbers, it's a big number if you were to convert, or in terms of new purchases, and government has aggressive targets, which may sound slightly optimistic for now, but they target to convert 80% of India's two-wheeler market into e-two-wheelers by 2013. So the potential is massive. How we get there is what will be the real story. So pictographically, this is how it looks like. 50% of households own a two-wheeler, but it is an average number, and it varies significantly by the states. You can see by the regions how two-wheeler landscape looks like. But when it comes to cars, India has probably one of the lowest penetration of cars per thousand per persons. It's as low as 32 per thousand. It's one of the lowest, you can say, among developing countries also. The same is little, you can say, the diverse when you look at it by the region. Now, the segment that has taken the ride is the e-scooter segment. Just before we go there, okay. There are several reasons why e-scooters have probably taken this fast pace. One reason specific to India, I would say, is it is quite common in India to have just be an urban household, have a car and a two-wheeler, and car could quite often be used when the entire family goes out, while the two-wheeler would be used on a day-to-day basis, whether it may be the person going out to work or somebody going out for shopping. So as a last mile mobility, the two-wheelers have the primary vehicle both in urban and rural areas. So in urban areas, scooters also play a prominent role because, if it's somebody going, just shopping or dropping a kid at school, Scooters are largely preferred, especially for women. The kind of dressing, in Indian women dressing, scooters are easier to use than motorbikes. So scooters as a vehicle of last mile also works in well with going electric at a time where the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure in India is yet to take off in a big way. So the biggest concern in EV adoption is range anxiety, like whether you will run out of charge on your battery. So if you are going to drop your kid to school or go shopping, you are only like few minutes away from your house quite often. So it kind of has been a big trigger in alleviating the concerns on EV adoption for now. That is primarily a reason why scooters have taken off in a big way. And second, scooters don't come with a personal branding. Like bikes are often seen as personal vehicles where the look and the sound matters, and electric vehicles having no sound doesn't really appeal to bulk of the young crowd who like to buy a motorbike. So, that is still a deterrent when I speak to customers why they would want to consider a motorbike which is electric while they're happy to take an e-scooter. But to my mind, the biggest factor that has helped these scooters pick up is price parity with the dominant or equivalent petrol variants. In India, Honda's models in scooters, which is Activa model, is the market leader. And we'll see later how, thanks to government subsidies, electric scooters with similar features are selling at comparable prices. And last but not the least, rising fuel prices are a touchy topic in India. India probably has one of the highest retail pump prices for fuel, thanks to almost punitive government taxes, both at central and state level. So that is also that is a trigger quite often for customers, but we'll see how it works out in terms of the breakdown. If you look at year-on-year growth in e-scooters, you would see it's a multiple of what it was in the earlier month. So what is few thousands in 2021 is now almost touching 12,000 for the leading player Ola here. Ola is a private company for now. It's funded by leading private investors. It started selling its products only as late as September 2021 with a very unique model. They have created a big splash in the market. And thanks to that, you have sales of 12,700 in April. That is April 2022 versus hardly anything. It's thanks to their launch. So the growth percentage numbers look stunning, but absolute numbers aren't much as yet, but there's a lot of pent-up demand. With government targets, which are quite high, what has helped is the subsidies which they have been providing. So this is the subsidy which the government provides directly to the manufacturers, subject to conditions of indigenization manufacture. So you have many players who are able to, despite India not producing batteries, which are imported either from China or Taiwan, largely. The vehicles have complied to government demands on indigenization and claim these tax benefits. And state level, you have further taxes depending upon which state you're going to register the vehicle in, and road tax benefits, which all translate to attractive price parity in terms of, these are the ICE variant, which is the most prominent scooter models in India. So the price you see on top here, 100,000 rupees, is after the central government subsidy, which we discussed earlier. The actual price would be almost 125 to 130,000. But the producer is able to claim the subsidy at his level before it comes to the showroom. So the ex-showroom price is maybe, it is roughly in the range of 15,000 rupees more than the equivalent ICE variant. But further tax benefits in terms of insurance, road tax, depending on the state, makes it comparable in terms of an equivalent product. And this is a big factor when it comes to customers. They see it as, oh, if I can buy an electric vehicle, and none of the most interesting factor is that almost all the producers of electric scooters in India have no pedigree in terms of producing any kind of vehicle. So almost all our startups or somebody who have just decided to assemble things together. In that sense, it is almost like a new sector is created on its own. Existing two-wheeler companies are yet, some of them have just started, others are expected to launch their own variant. Still, the demand is quite strong. I think it's primarily led by this factor. It looks same while the cost of ownership is significantly low. So this is the cost of ownership we calculated based on the battery capacity. This is the standard battery capacity we have assumed. There are, depending upon the models, there are different variants. So in India, gasoline prices have been hovering around ₹100 per liter for a while now. So, if you notice, this is just a 10%, it's a fraction of what it would cost you to run a vehicle. So the fact that you are getting a vehicle at the same price as a petrol variant, and the running costs are so low, kind of makes customers think, why should I be, this is something I should try. But often they ignore the fact that there's a battery which needs replacement in 5 to 7 years is what is broadly understood, which would add a 10,000 rupee depreciation over this 5 to 7 year period. So the actual benefit, cost benefit that you enjoy isn't significant if you are a light user. If you're going to use maybe 10,000 kilometers per year, which is less than 1,000 kilometers a month. To my mind, most customers are not doing this kind of arithmetic. They just look at the immediate benefit and the running cost benefit and are going ahead with the purchase. And it's easy to use. It's very tech savvy. It talks and it shows things coming on screen. So it is quite cool looking for now. But another segment which has been benefiting is the delivery rider segment. So for them, they're definitely not light users, they're heavy users. So for them, the return on investment in terms of, when I say that the running cost benefit, the relative cost advantage is much more than this. So fleets of delivery riders have been shifting to electric, thanks to the significant benefit they can have, because the total usage for them is easily more than 30,000 kilometers per year in many cases. What we think can really change the scenario is a coming up service called battery swapping. Now, the models are emerging, but what would change is when you buy upfront, a player like Bounce is offering customers an option to buy the bike and not buy the battery, and battery cost can make a difference of more than 30,000 rupees. This 30,000 is including the deposit you have to give to Bounce. So you are able to buy a bike without the battery for 45,000 rupees, which is roughly what you would pay even for a good cycle in many developed countries. So you are getting a bike, electric bike without the battery, and you pay as you go. And every time you swap the battery, which is charged, you pay for it like you would pay for a fuel, and it isn't much. So that is the new model which is emerging. Many players, the electric bike players, are tying up individually with these companies. Sun Mobility and Bounce are India-based companies. So Gogoro is a Taiwan-based company now that is listed in NASDAQ. It is Taiwan's largest battery swapping network. So Hero Motor Corp, which is now launching its own electric bikes, and which have a stake in Ather Energy, a leading electric bike manufacturer right now. They have tied up with Gogoro. So it'll be interesting to see how they use whatever technology and learning they have had in Taiwan and India, but they're yet to hit the ground, while Sun Mobility and Bounce are already there, and they have a strong market in E3-wheelers. Three-wheelers are like the tuk-tuks. So in India, tuk-tuks, you have both passenger and commercial, and both are hireable services. So, they're effectively public transport, and their average usage is quite high. So they have been actively shifting to electric, and in urban areas, both Sun Mobility and Bounce are already setting up services. Now, the key concerns right now, what customers have can largely be offset by battery swapping, which is the high upfront cost. If you go to hire the battery, obviously that comes down. And if you have a very good network in your area of operation, because two-wheelers and three-wheelers largely operate in a locality, unlike cars, which are intercity. So, you're saved of range anxiety, and you don't have to wait for charging. If you can swap batteries, you don't have to plug in, and you wouldn't waste your precious working time. Especially three-wheelers are, used for commercial purposes. They're very sensitive about the recharging time. So this is what is an emerging theme here, and which can kind of change the pace at which electric e-mobility adoption is happening in the country. But not all is good. I mean, if you look at the numbers in May, this is the latest numbers for sales of electric vehicles, there has been a dip versus April. In April, where they sold like between 11 to 12,000, the leading two players, they have dropped nearly 3,000 units in May. Now, the producers have come up with the explanation that it's due to supply issues because of what's happened in the global supply chain. They have had shortage of auto components. They're all dependent on semiconductors and batteries from abroad. But we also think it's because of safety concerns. Past 2 months, newspapers have been reporting cases of fires. The vehicle's catching fire either while it's charging at home, which has been an issue globally, or sometimes where it is parked outside. Now, it's the summer in India, temperatures can go as high as 45 degrees centigrade in some cities. So if the battery packs are not good enough, to take care of this kind of temperature variances, issues can happen. Batteries which they import are supposed to comply with the standards the government has set. And government announced an inquiry into what happened, but they found that some of the producers have been using substandard packaging material. That has been the finding. So it's a bit of concern. We are still not sure if this is a temporary blip, and will customers wait and watch, or will they forget and move on? I would think if there aren't too many cases, they would just forget and move on. There have been product recalls by leading players to fix the issue. So this is something one will have to watch in the near term how it happens. But in the long term, the main issue is in terms of charging infrastructure, given India's size and complexity and diversity, how they build the charging infrastructure, how quickly it is built, all that will matter. Right now, we have like roughly 2,000 charging stations across 25 states. So, you can imagine it's pretty restricted to few cities in India. Even the largest player, the erstwhile largest player, has only 750 retail outlets in India, which is not much. So it is early days, but the issue in terms of the safety concern has become a prominent issue only in the past few months, which is something we'll wait and watch. We'll quickly go through the leading players in the space. Ola is the segment leader, but they have lost some market share in the recent month. This was promoted by the same promoter as Ola Cabs. So Ola Cabs is India's leading shared mobility player, but during COVID, they just it was actually the companies who started, but now the promoter has taken majority stake and sold stake to investors. So Ola Cabs is not a shareholder of Ola Electric. It made a big splash by announcing the world's largest two-wheeler capacity, 10 million unit capacity, with plans to export electric scooters from India. And it is operating on a very unique model. It's a direct-to-consumer model. Your booking is you do online. There are no retail outlets. It's a little untested model in India. Probably the assumption is being an electric vehicle, it will have zero maintenance, so you wouldn't need one. Customers for now have been queuing up to book. They would just announce when you can open the booking, and the moment bookings close, they just shut the capacity. I mean, shut the, on the website, then they would say, oh, the next opening is on another day. So, and it's a very sleek looking vehicle, and I mean, technically also it looks quite cool. So the announcement by Ola and the kind of marketing they did also picked the public interest. You have a big player coming in here. Before that, we mostly had little less known players. Hero Electric was the earlier largest player, but Hero Electric is not related to Hero Motor Corp as a company, though they are the promoters are related. Many years ago, when the family settlement happened, the cousins of the Hero Motor Corp promoter group were given the future rights to start an electric vehicle. So when they launched electric, they could name themselves Hero Electric, though it had nothing to do with the India's largest two-wheeler producer, Hero Motors. So, but it's a little misleading because public still, I mean, kind of associates both as same, given, the promoter surnames are same, the company's name is same. There was a legal, I mean, both the families went on litigation, but now I think they have settled it out of court. And Hero Motor Corp, which is the listed entity, has decided to launch its own range, but not under the Hero name. Hero Electric has kind of lost market share after Ola came into the market. So I would think probably technically it wasn't, as appealing a product. We would know how they react to the new entrant in the market. Aether Energy is the more technically savvy product. They only have two models, and Hero Motor Corp, which is the listed entity I talked about just now, is the largest shareholder in Aether Energy. The two models are on the higher end, price end, and until Ola became a market leader, they were the market leader in terms of revenue, although in terms of volume, it was Hero Electric. Their product is considered, till then was considered the best technically savvy product and aesthetically better looking product compared to others which were more mass market. Aether Energy has continued to increase the number of units being sold, although they're not in the top 3. This is the only company where, as equity investors, we can think of taking a stake. Ampere has been an existing player, which got acquired by Greaves Cotton, which is a power equipment maker. So Greaves Cotton, after acquiring a stake in Ampere, they increased it to 100%, and they went on to acquire other brands in the 3E-wheeler segment. So, and most interestingly, in the last quarter, the company turned profitable. So they have shown you that, okay, being electric, we can be a profitable company. It's not, I mean, it's after including subsidies. So this is an interesting company, but obviously the valuations, the stock price have really zoomed up because, yeah, as I said, this is the only equity play we can have in the space. A few words on the other segments in electric vehicles in India, which globally, when we talk about e-vehicle, we think of Tesla. In India, right now, we have only one electric car, which is kind of in the affordable range, which is the Tata Nexon. Tata Nexon comes, they sell around $30,000 US, around 15 lakh Indian rupees, which I would think is the higher end of the mid-tier in terms of vehicles. but I mean, I don't see the vehicle being aggressively being marketed until charging infrastructure is in place, because cars typically tend to be used as an intercity vehicle. The market which they would probably currently targeting would be those who are buying the third or fourth vehicle. You know, you already have a vehicle for intercity usage. You want something to, a vehicle to go around the city. So that would be the target market. But Kia has launched in Kia EV6 is there, and the BMW i6 is also launched in India. But these two companies, since they don't comply to the indigenization requirement, they're priced quite high. I mean, they're priced obviously in the highest end of the car market in India at around 60 lakh rupees, which is around nearly 100,000 USD, 90 to 100,000 USD range. So the car market is pretty not existing as of now. Even the bus market is, there aren't any local players making buses. So the prices, they don't qualify for government subsidies. So that's an issue where that's also a primary reason why we are talking only about e-scooters, where you have all these players doing a pretty good job for now. Oh, that's it from me, Michael.
Thank you very much, Devi, for this very descriptive presentation. If you have any questions for Devi on everything that she has presented here today, feel free to send it in through the Q&A button on your Zoom app. Maybe I will kick it off. Devi, you mentioned the charging infrastructure and how it's yet to take off really in a big way. Can you briefly talk about what is being done at the moment and what are the major challenges in developing it further?
It's a bit of chicken and egg situation, you need, if you want to create, you want to first create in urban areas, and in urban areas, it costs money to get the space rented, put in the infrastructure, but you don't have enough vehicles to justify that. And it doesn't make sense to have one or two, you need enough to cover the area. So everyone's looking at the government to give some kind of policy subsidy benefits. So, that government push can help them. So government is there, they have already announced some schemes. And second is the interoperability, I make one vehicle, you make others, can we all plug into the same system? That kind of standard is also not in place. So we think the way it's emerging, maybe there will be two systems, because the two players we discussed earlier, Sun Mobility and Bounce, have kind of formed two groups where most players have aligned themselves. And some players are trying to set up their own. I think they probably might sell to others. That kind of consolidation might happen quite quickly. But increasingly, it is seen that the battery swapping might be a more viable option in India, given, you don't want to queue up to charge. I mean, we are talking about fast charging. And I mean, in Singapore, we have seen these cases of how frequent fires happen while people try to charge at homes, especially scooters. So government wouldn't probably want that kind of things to happen.
Absolutely. One attendee asks, what about motor and battery makers, if there are any prominent players in India? Now, you talked a bit about that during the presentation itself. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, legal extensions. Government in India is quite keen that we develop a technology for making your own batteries. So they announced a 4-year project where the government would give, now I think it's $4.5 billion. Okay, now I need to check the actual numbers. It's a significant amount of money to any player who can commit to certain milestones in terms of developing battery technology. There were many bidders, including Reliance, but the main bid has been given to Ola, the Ola Electric, which we discuss now. So the government is trying its best to push private sector to develop a technology, but as of now, it's all imported. None of the players actually say from whom they specifically import, but from what I understand, Korea is the prominent supply market, given the trade and political issues involved with China. But obviously China is also a supplier.
Absolutely. I guess somewhat related is you mentioned, of course, the indigenization requirements, and you outlined some of the major players who manufacture two-wheelers. Given these circumstances, is there room for foreign players to enter the market? Someone like Gogoro, for example, who comes from Taiwan.
Yeah, Gogoro is, they would be in the charging station segment.
Right. But not the two-wheeler segment itself.
Yeah, not the two-wheeler segment, because they have already tied up with Hero MotoCorp, which is a listed company, and Hero MotoCorp has taken a stake in Gogoro. When Gogoro went public through a SPAC listing, Hero was one of their prominent investors. So other than that, there was many instances where Elon Musk was talking with the government saying how Tesla want to set up, but government doesn't want them to import. They want the cars to be manufactured here. So it is still in a limbo. They're quite keen on pushing for that indigenization agenda, because in India, import duties on cars are punitive. So it makes it horribly expensive. You wouldn't have a big number being sold here if you were to import a car to India.
Understood. That makes sense. I actually really enjoyed your comment about the lack of noise being a disincentive for someone looking to buy a scooter, which I have heard before. It's a very interesting argument. So I wanted to
speakers. Apparently, they are planning to keep a speaker.
Right.
That will be linked to. So I found it interesting, but I think it's like really childish. A young man wanting to make that sound like
nothing like good product market fit, I guess. Given from what you have just shared, some players like Ola are following the direct-to-consumer model. Others have retail points, basically. Is there any data on which model has been more successful in the market so far?
No, so the latest is Ola is the most successful model in terms of recent sales data, but it's quite changing quite fast. Ola has been very, very creative in their marketing, and especially digital marketing. Even a LinkedIn post by the promoter Bhavish Agarwal, is in his 30s, and he's built this huge 2 large companies of multi-billion-dollar. So he's got a little star status in India. So Ola is the most popular model. In fact, Ola has triggered sale of other products, but those who are slightly more interested in the technology behind it prefer other energy products, is what I understand. We don't have such detailed analysis yet coming into the market, given it's still an emerging segment.
Sure, that makes sense. Are there any shared economy style players, or any players that are starting to explore this? So basically renting out scooters on short-term leases, similar to the bike share thing that we saw recently.
So, yeah, we don't have entities, like we had. In case of cars, a company called Zoom Cars is the most popular, which rents out vehicle. But two-wheelers, I see individuals doing it. Like they just buy a few bikes on their own and rent it out. There are no big corporations or companies doing it in a big way. Maybe they're doing it slightly city specific, but not like a branded one. So where I stay right now, I see many tourists take a vehicle, a two-wheeler on rent, and going around. So I think they just give a deposit, and so, but it is more like a individual run business. It's not like a listed entity. It's not a big.
Understood. You listed I think 5 companies, 5 players who are in the space right now. Do you see any potential for consolidation in the coming months or next couple of years?
So when I speak to potential buyers, I mean, those who are a little more aware about their purchases, they're waiting for incumbent two-wheeler companies to come up with a product they think they can trust more. You know, they don't want to buy a brand which they have no idea about. So TVS is a listed company. I mean, it's one of the largest two-wheeler makers. They have recently launched a product. But, you know, for them, it is a new business altogether. You know, it is like whether you want to buy a Ford Electric or whether you want to buy a Tesla. But, you know, many youngsters are quite okay buying the I mean, they have companies which are total startups selling these products. So, yeah, it's a bit of, you know, there is more space. It's a very emerging, evolving market. Customer preferences change very quickly. They are looking for a brand like Hero Moto. Hero Motors is a very trusted brand in India, and it has very high resale value. They kind of want a product like that, which has, which is quite sturdy and which they can sell again. But with prices falling to as low as 45,000 rupees for a rentable battery model, I think people will become less sensitive about who made what as long as it works. I mean, it is not like a bike where their personal branding is involved. It's more like a utility, you know.
Understood.
That's my take for now.
And yeah, and you're absolutely right. It very much seems to be early days for the market. So there's room to grow there.
Yeah, there's room to grow. There's room to, yeah.
Great. If there are no more questions, I believe we can wrap it up. Devi, what about your personal preference? Do you have a favorite model out of those manufacturers, or are you more of a car person?
I mean, to me, they all look the same. Personally, I don't difference much. So, and you know, so
that is
I think
perhaps something that they will have to think about.
Yeah, probably word of mouth. You know, they'll start figuring out. You know, oh, this one has better range, or this one does not fail as often. I mean, right now there are enough issues because, you know, some places are too hot, and then, you know, they find that batteries heat up too quickly. So I think the market is still very early stages of evolving.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Devi. Thank you everyone for attending today. If you wish to engage Devi directly, you can contact your Smartkarma account manager and they will be able to assist. And of course, I recommend following Devi's profile on Smartkarma so you don't miss any of her future insights. If you have any other questions, you can always email us at research@smartkarma.com. Thank you, Devi, very much once again.
Thank you, Michael. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.